Dramily.com, unlimited drama series.
My wife told me, my ex will always have a place in my life. Accept it. I said, okay. Then I made sure he had a place in court, too. The wrench slipped from my grease-stained fingers and clattered against the concrete floor of my garage. It was past midnight, and I'd been working on the transmission of my '92 Ford pickup for 3 hours straight. The house was supposed to be quiet, but Jessica's voice carried through the thin walls like a knife through butter. "I miss you too," she whispered into her phone, thinking I couldn't hear. "You know how I feel about you, Ethan?" That hasn't changed. I froze beneath the truck, my heart hammering against my ribs. Ethan, her ex-boyfriend from college. The same guy she'd sworn was just a friend when they reconnected on social media 6 months ago. "My husband doesn't understand us," Jessica continued, her voice dropping to that sultry tone I hadn't heard directed at me in years. "He's so ordinary. You always made me feel special." The words hit me like a sledgehammer to the gut. I'd been working 60-hour weeks at my auto repair shop, trying to save enough for the vacation she'd been wanting. Meanwhile, she was whispering sweet nothings to another man in our bedroom. "I know, baby," she said, and I could practically hear her smile. "My ex will always have a place in my life. He needs to accept it, or we're done." I slid out from under the truck, wiping my hands on an old rag. "My name is David Chen. No, wait, that's not right. My name is Mike Sullivan, and I've been married to Jessica for 8 years. We met when she was a struggling law student, and I was building my business from nothing. Back then, she said she loved my ambition, my work ethic, the way I could fix anything with my hands. Now, apparently, I was just ordinary." I stood in the doorway between the garage and kitchen, watching her through the crack in the door. She was pacing around our living room in that silk nightgown I'd bought her for our anniversary, her blonde hair catching the lamplight. She looked beautiful and guilty and completely unaware that her husband was listening to every word. "Thursday works perfectly," she said. "Mike will be at the shop until late. We can meet at that little cafe downtown, the one with the private booths." My hands clenched into fists. The same cafe where we'd had our first date. "I love you too," she whispered before hanging up. The silence that followed was deafening. I watched her check her reflection in the hallway mirror, smoothing her hair and practicing innocent expressions. When she finally headed toward the bedroom, I slipped back under the truck and picked up my wrench. Thursday. I had 3 days to figure out what I was going to do about this. The next morning, Jessica acted like nothing had happened. She kissed my cheek before leaving for her law firm, the same perfunctory peck she'd been giving me for months. Her coffee mug still sat on the counter, lipstick stain on the rim, next to her phone charger and car keys. "Working late again tonight," she called over her shoulder. "Don't wait up." I nodded and smiled, playing the role of the oblivious husband, but inside, my mind was racing. How long had this been going on? How many late nights at the office had actually been spent with Ethan? At the shop, I couldn't concentrate. I nearly stripped the threads on a spark plug and mixed up 2 customer orders. My assistant Tommy kept giving me worried looks. "Boss, you okay? You seem distracted." "Just tired," I lied, wiping sweat from my forehead. "Long night." But I wasn't tired. I was furious and hurt and planning. By Wednesday evening, I'd made my decision. I was going to follow her to that cafe and see exactly what kind of friendship she had with Ethan. I needed to know the truth before I decided what to do about it. Thursday dragged by like a death march. Every customer interaction felt surreal, like I was watching someone else live my life. At 5:30, I told Tommy to lock up and drove across town to the cafe. I parked where I could see the entrance but stay hidden behind a delivery truck. At 6:15, Jessica's silver BMW pulled into the lot. She'd changed clothes since morning. Gone was the conservative business suit, replaced by a flowing red dress that hugged her curves. She'd let her hair down and refreshed her makeup. She looked like she was going on a date, because she was. Ethan arrived 10 minutes later in a black Mercedes that probably cost more than I made in 6 months. He was tall, dark-haired, wearing an expensive suit that screamed, "Successful real estate agent." I remembered him from Jessica's old photos. He'd aged well, kept himself in shape, probably had a personal trainer and a nutritionist. Everything I wasn't. I watched them embrace in the parking lot, his hands lingering on her waist longer than appropriate for old friends. They walked into the cafe together, his hand on the small of her back, and I felt something cold and hard settle in my chest. Through the window, I could see them at a corner booth, leaning across the table toward each other, like teenagers in love. Jessica was laughing at something he said, touching his hand, playing with her hair, the way she used to do with me. When he brushed a strand from her face, she didn't pull away. She leaned into his touch like she was starving for it. Then she kissed him. It wasn't a friendly peck on the cheek. It was soft, lingering, intimate. The kind of kiss that said, "I've missed you and I want you and I choose you." When they broke apart, she was smiling that radiant smile I hadn't seen in months. I sat in my truck, hands gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles went white, and watched my wife fall in love with another man. They talked and laughed and touched each other like they had every right to be together, like I didn't exist. After an hour, they left together. I followed at a distance as Ethan's Mercedes headed toward the expensive side of town. They pulled into the parking lot of a luxury apartment complex, and I watched Jessica get out of her car and follow him inside. She didn't come home until after midnight. I pretended to be asleep when she slipped into bed, but I could smell his cologne on her skin. The next morning, I couldn't keep pretending. When Jessica came down for breakfast, humming cheerfully and checking her phone every few seconds, I set my coffee mug down hard enough to make her jump. "I saw you," I said quietly. Her face went pale, but she recovered quickly. "Saw me what?" "At the cafe, with Ethan. I saw you kiss him." For a moment, she looked genuinely stricken. Then her expression hardened into something I'd never seen before. Cold, defiant, almost cruel. "So?" she said, crossing her arms. "What exactly are you accusing me of?" "I'm not accusing you of anything. I'm telling you what I saw. You kissed another man. You went to his apartment. You came home smelling like his cologne." She laughed, actually laughed. "You're being paranoid, Mike. Ethan and I are friends. We've always been close. Friends don't kiss like that. Don't be jealous," she said, her voice taking on that condescending tone she used when she thought I was being unreasonable. "You need to accept that my ex will always be in my life. Nothing will change my mind. Either you accept it or we say goodbye and move on. I want us to stay close friends." The casual cruelty of it took my breath away. She wasn't even trying to deny it anymore. She was giving me an ultimatum. Accept her affair or get out. "Friends don't kiss," I repeated. She shrugged. "It's not your business to control who I care about." In that moment, I understood the real choice she was offering. Tolerate betrayal dressed up as friendship, or walk away. The woman I'd married, the woman I'd built a life with, was telling me to my face that another man mattered more than our marriage vows. I stood up slowly, my chair scraping against the kitchen floor. "You're right," I said. "I can't control who you care about, but I can control who I'm married to." Her confident expression flickered. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means I'm done calling this friendship. You crossed a line, Jessica. And now, you have to live with the consequences." Over the next week, I said little, but I worked. I saved messages she forgot to delete, pulled timestamps from shared calendars, and made an appointment with a lawyer. The attorney, a sharp-eyed woman named Patricia Walsh, didn't lecture me about trying to work things out. She just explained the process, the filings, and what proof could matter if the court cared about fault. "Illinois recognizes irreconcilable differences," she said, "but if you can prove adultery, it might affect property division and alimony. Do you have documentation?" I showed her the photos I'd taken at the cafe, the text messages I'd recovered from Jessica's laptop backup, the credit card statements showing expensive dinners and hotel charges I'd never been told about. "This is good," Patricia said. "Very good. How do you want to proceed?" I want her to understand that actions have consequences, I said. She thinks I'm just some ordinary guy who'll roll over and take whatever she dishes out. She's about to learn otherwise. The paperwork took 3 days to prepare. On Friday evening, I placed a folder on the kitchen counter where Jessica would be sure to see it. Then I waited. She came home from another late meeting at 9:30, looking flushed and satisfied. When she saw the folder, her step faltered. "What's that?" she asked, wary. "Divorce papers," I said calmly. "And a petition for an at-fault divorce. I'm done calling this friendship." Her mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. For the first time since this whole mess started, she looked genuinely shocked. "You can't be serious," she said, her voice rising. "Over some harmless flirting? Mike, you're overreacting." "Harmless flirting?" I pulled out my phone and showed her the photos from the cafe. "This is harmless? Spending 3 hours at his apartment is harmless? Charging lingerie to our joint credit card for your boyfriend is harmless?" She stared at the evidence, her face cycling through emotions: shock, anger, fear, and finally, calculation. "Fine," she said, her voice turning ice cold. "If that's how you want to play it, we'll play it. But don't expect this to be easy. I know things about you too, Mike. Things that could make your life very difficult." "Like what?" She smiled, and it wasn't pleasant. "Like the cash payments some of your customers make. The ones you don't always report. The IRS might be very interested in your creative bookkeeping." My blood ran cold. She was talking about the occasional under-the-table work I did for neighbors and friends. Oil changes, brake jobs, small stuff that barely added up to a few $100s a month. Hardly worth destroying someone over. But Jessica was a lawyer. She knew how to make mountains out of molehills. "You'd really do that?" I asked. "Destroy me just to avoid the consequences of your own choices?" "I'd do whatever it takes to protect myself," she said. "You taught me that, Mike. You always said the world doesn't owe you anything, that you have to fight for what you want. Well, I want my freedom, and I want to keep what's mine." "What's yours? Everything we built together is ours." "Not anymore," she said, picking up the divorce papers and scanning them with professional interest. "You want to play hardball? Let's play. But remember, I'm the one with the law degree." The next few weeks were a nightmare of legal maneuvering and personal attacks. Jessica hired a shark of a divorce attorney, someone who specialized in high-conflict cases and had a reputation for scorched earth tactics. Suddenly, I was being accused of financial abuse, emotional manipulation, and creating a hostile home environment. My own lawyer, Patricia, warned me that Jessica was playing dirty. "She's trying to paint you as controlling and financially irresponsible," Patricia explained during one of our meetings. "The good news is that her affair is well documented. The bad news is that she's making this as expensive and complicated as possible." "What about her threats? The IRS stuff?" "Probably empty threats. But we should clean up your books just in case. Any cash transactions need to be documented going forward." I spent my evenings and weekends organizing receipts and bank statements, trying to prove that I wasn't the financial criminal Jessica was making me out to be. Meanwhile, she'd moved in with her sister temporarily, claiming she felt unsafe in our home. The whole situation was insane. I was the wronged party here, but somehow, I was the one being treated like a villain. Then, things got worse. My best friend since high school, Danny Morrison, called me on a Tuesday night. His voice was uncomfortable, apologetic. "Mike, I need to talk to you about something. Sarah's been getting calls from Jessica." Sarah was Danny's wife, a sweet woman who'd always been friendly with Jessica. They'd gone to yoga classes together, had girls' nights out, the usual married couple social stuff. "What kind of calls?" "Jessica's been telling her things about your marriage, about how you supposedly treated her. Sarah's pretty upset about it." My stomach dropped. "What kind of things?" "She's saying you were controlling, that you monitored her phone and emails, that you threatened her when you found out about Ethan. She's making it sound like you were abusive." "That's complete bullshit, Danny. You know me better than that." "I know, man, I know, but Sarah, she's having a hard time with this. She says if there's any chance Jessica's telling the truth, she can't be comfortable having you around our kids." The betrayal hit me like a physical blow. Sarah had known me for 15 years. She'd seen me with Danny's kids, watched me coach their Little League teams, attended birthday parties and barbecues at our house. And she was willing to believe Jessica's lies over 15 years of evidence to the contrary. So, what are you saying, Danny? I'm saying maybe we need some space while this all gets sorted out. Just until things calm down. Space. Yeah, space. I hung up without saying goodbye. Over the next week, the pattern repeated itself. Jessica was systematically poisoning our social circle, telling carefully crafted stories that painted me as an unstable, controlling husband who'd finally snapped. She was smart about it. She didn't make accusations she couldn't support, but she planted seeds of doubt and let people's imaginations fill in the blanks.
She just gave me a massage! That's it!
Remember, I won't be a fool!
Watch more on Grammarly.com.
My neighbor, Bill Henderson, stopped waving when he saw me in the yard. The guys at my Thursday night poker game suddenly had scheduling conflicts. Even my barber, a guy I'd been going to for 10 years, seemed nervous and distracted when I came in for a cut. Jessica was destroying my reputation with surgical precision, and there wasn't much I could do about it. I couldn't exactly call up everyone I knew and say, "By the way, my wife is lying about me." That would just make me look desperate and possibly unhinged. The isolation was crushing. I'd always been a social guy, someone who enjoyed having friends over for barbecues and football games. Now I was coming home to an empty house every night, eating dinner alone, watching TV by myself. But the worst part was the doubt. When enough people start treating you like you might be dangerous, you begin to wonder if maybe there's something wrong with you that you can't see. Maybe I had been controlling. Maybe I'd been unreasonable. Maybe Jessica's affair was just a symptom of larger problems in our marriage. Then I'd remember the way she'd laughed when she told me Ethan would always be in her life. The casual cruelty of that ultimatum. The cold calculation in her eyes when she threatened to destroy my business. No, I wasn't the villain here. I was just the only one fighting fair in a rigged game. 3 months into the divorce proceedings, I was at my lowest point. The legal bills were mounting, my social life had evaporated, and Jessica seemed to be winning every battle. She'd gotten temporary alimony, temporary custody of our shared assets, and a restraining order that kept me from contacting her directly. Meanwhile, she was living her best life with Ethan, posting photos on social media of romantic dinners and weekend getaways. She looked happy, glowing, like someone who'd finally escaped from prison. That's when I ran into Danny and Sarah at the grocery store. I was in the cereal aisle, trying to decide between generic cornflakes and the name brand I couldn't really afford anymore, when I heard Sarah's voice behind me. "Oh my God, Danny, it's him." I turned around and there they were. Danny looked embarrassed and guilty. Sarah looked genuinely frightened, like she'd encountered a wild animal. "Hey, Danny," I said, trying to keep my voice normal. Sarah. "Mike," Danny nodded. "How are you holding up?" "I've been better." Sarah was clutching Danny's arm, whispering something urgent in his ear. I caught the words, "Call security," and "What if he follows us?" Something snapped inside me. "Really, Sarah?" I said, my voice louder than I'd intended. "You think I'm going to attack you in the grocery store over breakfast cereal?" "Mike, calm down," Danny said, but I was just getting started. 15 years, I said, stepping closer. 15 years I've known you, Sarah. I taught your son how to throw a curveball. I helped you move into your house. I was at the hospital when Emma was born. And you think I'm some kind of monster because my cheating wife says so? She showed me the texts, Sarah said, her voice shaking. The things you said to her. The threats. What texts? What threats? You said you'd make her pay. You said you'd destroy her life. I stared at her in disbelief. I never sent her any texts like that. I'm not even allowed to contact her directly. She has screenshots, Sarah insisted, from before the restraining order. Then she faked them. Sarah, I swear to you, I never threatened Jessica. Not once. But I could see in her eyes that she didn't believe me. Jessica had done her work too well. She'd created a narrative where I was the dangerous ex-husband, the kind of man who might snap and hurt someone. You know what? I said, my voice rising. Forget it. Believe whatever you want to believe. But when you find out the truth about what really happened, Don't come crawling back asking for forgiveness. Mike, please, Danny said, but I was already walking away. Tell Jessica she won, I called over my shoulder. She turned my best friends against me with lies. I hope she's proud of herself. I left my card in the aisle and walked out of the store, my hands shaking with rage and humiliation. In the parking lot, I sat in my truck for 20 minutes, trying to calm down enough to drive. That night, I called Patricia and told her what had happened. They think I threatened Jessica, I said. They think I'm dangerous. How is that possible? How can people who've known me for years believe I'm capable of that? Because your wife is very good at what she does, Patricia said. She's a lawyer, Mike. She knows how to build a case and present evidence in the most damaging light possible. The question is, what do you want to do about it? I want to fight back. Okay, but if we're going to fight, we need to be smart about it. No more confrontations in grocery stores. No more emotional outbursts. We need to be methodical, professional, and absolutely bulletproof. What do you have in mind? I think it's time we went on the offensive. Jessica wants to play games? Let's show her what happens when she plays with someone who's tired of losing. Patricia's plan was elegant in its simplicity. Instead of trying to defend against Jessica's attacks, we were going to expose her lies and let the truth speak for itself. The screenshots she's showing people, Patricia explained. If they're fake, there will be evidence of that. Text messages have metadata, timestamps, phone numbers, technical details that are hard to fake convincingly. We filed a motion requesting all of Jessica's electronic communications related to our marriage, including her phone records, social media accounts, and email. It was an aggressive move, but Patricia argued that if Jessica was going to make claims about threatening text messages, she needed to produce the originals for forensic analysis. Jessica's lawyer fought the motion hard, claiming it was an invasion of privacy and harassment. But the judge was intrigued by our allegation of fabricated evidence and ordered a limited disclosure. What we found was a goldmine. Not only were the threatening text messages fake, clumsily created using a text generator app, but Jessica's real messages told a very different story. She'd been planning her exit strategy for months, consulting with divorce attorneys and financial advisors, while still living in our house and sleeping in our bed. More damaging were her communications with Ethan and her sister. In those messages, she was honest about her motivations and methods. Mike is so gullible, she'd written to her sister. He actually believes I feel bad about this. I just need to keep him off balance until the divorce is final. To Ethan, the restraining order was genius. Now, he can't defend himself when people ask about the threatening messages. By the time this is over, everyone will think he's unstable. And most damaging of all, a text to her lawyer. I don't care if the threats are fake. No one will check, and it makes him look dangerous. Use whatever works. Patricia was practically glowing when she showed me the evidence. This is it, she said. This is everything we need. She's admitted to fabricating evidence, manipulating witnesses, and committing perjury. Her credibility is about to be completely destroyed. We scheduled a hearing for the following week. In the meantime, I did something I probably shouldn't have done but felt completely justified in doing. I made copies of Jessica's most damaging messages and sent them to Danny and Sarah. Danny called me within an hour. Jesus Christ, Mike, I'm so sorry. We had no idea she was lying. Yeah, well, the damage is done, isn't it? What can we do? How can we make this right? I don't know if you can, Danny. You've known me for 20 years, and you believed her over me. That's not something I'm going to forget anytime soon. Mike, please. We were trying to protect our family. If someone told you that one of our friends might be dangerous, wouldn't you err on the side of caution? He had a point, but I wasn't ready to be reasonable yet. I was too angry, too hurt by months of isolation and betrayal. Maybe, I said, but I would have asked questions. I would have given my friend the benefit of the doubt. I would have looked for proof before I cut them out of my life. The hearing was a massacre. Patricia presented Jessica's messages methodically, building a case that she was not only an adulterer, but a liar and a manipulator who had committed perjury and fabricated evidence. Jessica's lawyer tried to argue that the messages were taken out of context, but there wasn't much context that could explain away, "I don't care if the threats are fake." The judge was not amused. "Mrs. Sullivan," he said, his voice cold with disapproval, "are you telling this court that you did not fabricate text messages and present them as evidence of threats from your husband?" Jessica, for the first time since this whole ordeal began, looked genuinely scared. "Your Honor, I was frightened. I felt like I needed to protect myself. By lying under oath? By presenting fabricated evidence? Mrs. Sullivan, perjury is a serious crime. I'm referring this matter to the district attorney's office for possible prosecution." The restraining order was dissolved immediately. Jessica's credibility was in ruins, and suddenly the financial picture of our divorce looked very different. "Adultery is one thing," Patricia explained afterward, "but perjury and fabricating evidence? That's going to cost her big time. The judge is not going to be sympathetic when it comes to property division or alimony." I should have felt vindicated. I should have felt like justice was being served. But mostly, I just felt empty. The woman I'd loved for 8 years had tried to destroy my life to cover up her affair. She'd turned my friends against me, damaged my reputation, and put me through months of hell. And for what? So she could be with a real estate agent who drove a leased Mercedes and wore expensive cologne? The final divorce hearing was scheduled for a rainy Thursday in November. I arrived at the courthouse early, wearing my best suit and carrying a folder full of documents that would legally end my marriage. Jessica was already there with her lawyer, looking pale and nervous. The confident, defiant woman who'd given me an ultimatum in our kitchen had been replaced by someone who looked like she was attending her own execution. The proceedings were swift and brutal. The judge had clearly read all the evidence and was not in a forgiving mood. "This is one of the most egregious cases of misconduct I've seen in 20 years on the bench," he said. "Mrs. Sullivan, your behavior throughout these proceedings has been dishonest, manipulative, and frankly, criminal. You have perjured yourself, fabricated evidence, and attempted to defraud this court." Jessica's lawyer tried to interrupt, but the judge held up a hand. "I'm not finished. Your client's actions have not only damaged her husband, but have undermined the integrity of these proceedings. That will be reflected in my judgment." The final settlement was everything Patricia had hoped for and more. I kept the house, the business, and most of our joint assets. Jessica was ordered to pay my legal fees and received no alimony. The judge also recommended that the State Bar Association review her conduct for possible disciplinary action. As we left the courthouse, Jessica tried to approach me. "Mike, wait, please. Can we talk?" I stopped and looked at her. She looked smaller somehow, diminished. The confident lawyer who'd threatened to destroy my business was gone, replaced by someone who looked lost and desperate. "What do you want to talk about, Jessica?" "I'm sorry. I know that doesn't mean much now, but I'm sorry. I never meant for things to go this far." "You're right," I said. "It doesn't mean much. You had a choice at every step of this process. You could have been honest about the affair. You could have asked for a divorce without trying to destroy me. You could have admitted the truth instead of fabricating evidence. But you chose to lie, cheat, and manipulate instead." "I was scared," she said, tears starting to form in her eyes. "I knew I'd messed up, and I panicked. I thought if I could just control the narrative." "You thought you could get away with it," I corrected. "You thought I was too ordinary, too stupid, too weak to fight back. You underestimated me." "What happens now?" "Now you live with the consequences of your choices. You wanted Ethan? You've got him. You wanted your freedom? You've got that too. But you don't get to keep everything else as well." I started to walk away, then turned back. "Oh, and Jessica? The district attorney's office called yesterday. They're filing charges for perjury and evidence tampering. Your lawyer should have mentioned that." The color drained from her face. "Mike, please. I know you're angry, but don't you think I've been punished enough?" "No," I said simply. "I don't." 3 months later, Jessica pled guilty to a misdemeanor charge of evidence tampering and received 2 years of probation and community service. Her law license was suspended pending a bar association review. Ethan, apparently, had lost interest once she was no longer the successful lawyer with the nice house and the stable income. Danny and Sarah reached out several times, trying to rebuild our friendship, but I wasn't interested. Some betrayals cut too deep to forgive, and I'd learned that I was better off with a smaller circle of people I could actually trust. I kept the house, expanded the business, and started dating again. Nothing serious yet, but I was open to the possibility that not all women were like Jessica. Most importantly, I'd learned something valuable about myself. I was stronger than I'd thought, smarter than people assumed, and absolutely unwilling to be anyone's victim. Jessica had called me ordinary like it was an insult. She was right. I was ordinary. I was a working-class guy who fixed cars for a living and believed in honoring his commitments. But ordinary didn't mean weak. It didn't mean stupid. And it definitely didn't mean I would roll over and accept betrayal just to keep the peace. She'd wanted to know what happened when she pushed an ordinary man too far. Now she knew,